Welcome to another edition of Garage Pros. I'm Joe Michael, and today we're going to be installing the Fischer catalytic converter for a 2006 Toyota Camry. So in this particular car, we're only going to use the one O2 sensor. This cat comes with 3 O2 ports. We have one of them already plugged. We're going to go ahead and plug the other one we're not going to be using. And what we've used here is the oil drain plug. It fits perfect in the hole. And it comes with a gasket. You can get it in any of the parts stores. Okay, so what we're going to do is we've got these bolts up here on the manifold loosened. So you want to do that first. Then we're going to move to the back and work our way forward since we've got those loosened. So we need to use this cutoff wheel. These bolts, there's nothing left of them. There's no way to get hold of them. So we're going to go ahead and cut these off, and then we'll move our way forward. Okay, so before I cut the other bolt off, I need to hold this up, so I use a bungee cord. You just want to hook it somewhere where it's pretty secure, and it'll help hold this so it doesn't come down and hit you. Now disconnect the O2 sensor. So to get this out, what you need to do is reach up here, push this tab in. You gotta lose a little pressure there. Wiggle this. It'll be a little snug, and then it'll come out. Now we need to remove the 2 bolts for the hanger. Okay, so we're going to remove this hanger. Okay, so the next bolt we have to take out are these 2 nuts off the manifold studs. These are what we had to break loose earlier. While the engine was warm, go ahead and shoot some penetrating oil on it and let it soak for a little while. If that doesn't work, you can put a little bit of heat on them with a torch. Okay, so we're going to Okay, so we got the nuts off. Everything's unbolted, unhooked. This is ready to come out. So you gotta, sometimes you get lucky. These will come out fairly simple. Okay, so now we want to come back. We want to pull this forward, slide it to the side, and you have to slide it out of this hanger. Drop it down, and we're ready to put the new one in. So here's the old catalytic converter and our new one. You can clearly see here where the flex pipe is. This one was completely worn out. The exhaust is leaking now through here, so it was totally rotted out. One thing you can notice here is these Fischers have a nice thick flange on both ends. They have a shield around the catalytic converter and pretty nice mount. So we're going to go ahead and get this one over to the car and start putting it in. We're going to go ahead and clean up the mounting flange where we're going to put the new cat to it. And this is mainly so that the new crush sleeve has a good smooth surface to seal to. Okay, let's go up and look at the engine. We'll go ahead and clean this one as well. Okay. All right, so we're going to put a little bit of penetrating oil in this mount just to help it slide through a little easier. I'm going to put a little bit of bearing grease on these, and the only reason this is actually going to be on here is to help stick it so that they don't fall off while I'm lifting it into place. And that should help hold it in long enough to get it in the car. So to put this in, you want to line this mount up. That's why we put the penetrating oil so it slides. We're going to slide it forward, slide it back into the rear hole. Then we want to line the front up with these studs and then get a nut started. Okay. I already put anti-seize on the threads for the first nut. This particular one, the stud came out rather than the nut. That happens. So we're going to go ahead and put anti-seize on the threads and put this up in. Okay. Now before we tighten anything else up, we want to get everything put together loosely so that we can make sure it's lined up, and then we'll go ahead and tighten the rest of the bolts. Okay, so we're going to put the second bracket on. And we're going to work our way to the back. All right, let's go. Okay, so as you're tightening these with your finger, you want to make sure that this pipe is inside the collar here so that the sleeve is kind of centered up on this flange that we cleaned earlier. Now everything is finger tight. We have everything in place, so we're going to start tightening all the hardware. You want to start at the back and work your way to the front because you want to pull this exhaust together, and then we'll move our way forward. Now these you do want to tighten. You don't want to break them off, but you want to tighten it because that sleeve we put in earlier with the grease has to crush, and that's what seals it. It takes the shape of all the abnormalities in here and seals the exhaust. You also want to use lock washers in here. Okay, so we're good here. We're going to go ahead and pull it up tight on the engine. Okay, you want to tighten these even across, give them a couple of turns, and then move side to side so it pulls up nice and even. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and tighten these. We're going to install a new O2 sensor on here. We're putting this in for a number of reasons. If you take the old one out, you risk damaging it. It's been in there as long as the old cat was in there. The wires are brittle, so we're going to go ahead and replace it with this new O2 sensor. Before you put it in, you want to put just a dab of anti-seize on the threads. Try not to get any on this area right here. You just want it on the threads only. Doesn't take a lot, just dab a little bit in one spot and we'll be in good shape. You also want to make sure that this washer here is seated all the way back on the O2 sensor before you put it in. And we're going to go ahead and tighten it up. We're using a wrench. They do make a specialty socket for these. It's not necessary to purchase a specialty tool for one time for a homeowner. It doesn't make much sense, so the wrench is perfectly fine. You want to tighten this up, but you don't want to break it off. You want to tighten it just to where you see the gap close up in the O2 sensor's crush sleeve. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and plug the wire back in till you hear that click and you know it's secured again. We finished putting the O2 sensor in. We have it hooked up, so we're going to go back and double check, make sure everything is tight. We tightened up the back. We have our ports plugged, the extra 2 ports that were in this cat that we didn't use. Our O2 sensor was tight. We have it plugged in, we have our clamp on, and we tightened the front. So the install portion is done. Now what we'll have to do is put the car down on the ground, and we'll need to break this catalytic converter in. If you decide to put the catalytic converter on and not break it in, what's going to happen is the brick that's in here is going to end up not in the right position. There is filler in here that needs to swell up, which secures the brick into place. By not doing that, starting it and just driving down the road, it's going to move around, it's going to end up dislodged. It's either going to be an ineffective catalytic converter or possibly one that's going to rattle, and it's going to avoid your warranty. So to break in the catalytic converter, you want to start the car, let it get up to operating temperature. Once it gets up to operating temperature, you want to go ahead and raise the idle up to about 2,500 RPMs. For 3 to 5 minutes, just hold it there. Once it reaches 3 to 5 minutes, you want to go ahead, take your foot off the gas, shut the car off, and then you want to let it cool down. Once it cools down, then you can go ahead and take it for a test drive, and that'll seat the brick into the catalytic converter, and you should be good for many miles.